On today's episode, we'll be comparing Knights of the Fallen Empire with Knights of the Eternal Throne. Hi everyone, my name's Doug Jankowski and welcome to the Grizzled Geek and another Star Wars The Old Republic video. Today I'm going to be looking at Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne and comparing the two. Rather I should be saying contrasting the two, because I'm going to look at the differences between these two parts of the Eternal Throne, the Fallen, Fallen Empire, Eternal Throne storyline, and discussing what the difference between the two was, specifically how Knights of the Eternal Throne, which is the second, was so much better than the first, the Knights of the Fallen Empire. It occurred to me as I was getting ready for this that I made a mistake in my last video where I kind of generically referred to, didn't generically refer to, I had intended to be talking strictly about Knights of the Fallen Empire, but I kind of implied that I was talking about generically about the whole thing, because I called it, Knights of the Eternal Throne, which was not what I was intending. I was intending to talk about Knights of the Fallen Empire. So sorry about that if there was any confusion, but yeah, I was specifically referring to how how the first one is, really, what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't want to say bad. It wasn't bad. It was just convoluted and kind of meandering. So it wasn't a very strong story. They were very ambitious with what they were going for, but for whatever reasons, I don't know if it's because the fans just weren't taking to the stories or were impatient or whatever, but they kind of rushed the story along, dropped various elements, and that's why that video was specifically about dropped plot lines and missing details from that story. So yeah, that wasn't really part of this video. That was just me clarifying what I was doing with the last video. So sorry if there was any confusion on that. So let's go ahead and move on then to the purpose of this video, which is to compare those two stories and really touch on why the Knights of the Eternal Throne, which is the second part, is really so much better than the first part. And the first of those reasons is it is, like I said, far tighter a story. It's not nearly as meandering as Knights of the Fallen Empire was. Knights of the Fallen Empire just was kind of all over the place. You weren't really sure exactly what they were going for with the story. You could tell that it had initially intended to be something more than it was, and they dropped various elements. But that's not the case in Knights of the Fallen, or Knights of the Eternal Throne. That story was far tighter. It was, half the not quite half the chapters. There were 16 in the first, the Knights of the Fallen Empire. There were only 9 in Knights of the Eternal Throne. So they kind of, they just tightened up the story. They focused on what they wanted to focus on and left all of the extra stuff out, which made for a tighter story, for I think a more enjoyable story, because you were focused on really 3 specific through stories. I don't want to get into spoilers here, but you have the story about Valen and her character. You've got the story about why am I forgetting her name? Scorpio and what's going on with her and her, the elements of the story that are about her, and then you've got the conclusion. Again, I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but that, in my opinion, made for a way better story than the kind of meandering mess that was Knights of the Fallen Empire. All right, so that's point one. Point two, and this will be a list of 5 in no particular order. The second one is the Knights of the Eternal Throne was far more focused on character building, which is way more interesting than I hesitate to call it this, but the best term I can come up with is world building, kind of establishing what Zakul is, what's up with the Emperor, and just kind of establishing the world we're going to be living in that's 5 years in the future. So there's a lot of world building in this first, or in that first installment, versus a tight focus on characters and motivations of characters and things that made sense, that weren't just kind of all over the place, and characters not really seeming to have any kind of particular motivation, just serving whatever the plot was at the time. So, all right, that's number 2. Number 3 is there was clear motivation for the antagonist. In the first Knights of the Fallen Empire, it is not always super clear what Arkan's motivation is. Why did he kill his father, other than I guess because he was abusive in nature. It's really not clear why that is, because he seems, is it just because his brother was so much better than him and he's jealous, and it turns into turning on the father that made them compete? You really never get a compelling answer in that sense, but from the trailers why Valen is the way she is, what her motivations are, or what her general motivations are, and they become clearer as the story progresses. You're never really wondering, well, why are you doing this? And that's also true for Valen, or not Valen. Sorry, I just was talking about Valen. It's also true for Scorpio. So in that sense, she really, all of the characters get their clear motivations. Their stories are set up nicely. All right, next, let's go on to sticking with Valen and Scorpio. The antagonists in Knights of the Eternal Throne are far more capable antagonists. They are not idiots, for lack of a better term. Arkan in Knights of the Fallen Empire is pretty much an idiot. He ignores obvious problems, I guess from a sense of superiority. It's never really clear why he just kind of, there's no better way to put it, he ignores things. When the Mandalorians are fighting on Davin, he just kind of like, this is intriguing. I'll just kind of watch them and see what's going on. He comes across as somebody who's got no real plan, and that's probably at least partly because they had to drop so much, or it seems obvious they did drop so much of what their originally planned story was, and maybe his motivations would have come clearer and he would have seemed less I don't want idiotic, I guess. It's hard to say because it does seem obvious that they dropped so much that was supposed to happen, so that they just didn't adapt well. Maybe, I don't know, to make him seem, or maybe he just was an idiot and Valen is not. But Valen and Scorpio come across as far more capable. Even, I don't want to say ruthless, because Arkham was pretty ruthless. So anyways, and again, that might be due to the story constraints. to the fact that they seem to abandon part of their storyline. But anyways, Valen comes across in Knights of the Eternal Throne as a capable threat and a capable antagonist who presents a real threat to you. All right, now those are the differences between the two that are that I think make the Knights of the Eternal Throne a far better storyline than Knights of the Fallen Empire. I do, however, want to point out, or kind of finish things up with the fact that the ultimate ending, and again, not getting into spoilers, but the ultimate ending, I felt just fell down. I was not really, I didn't buy into it. I thought it was kind of stupid. Again, this probably suffers from the fact that they had to drop storylines, but the whole thing ends up seeming kind of pointless. Like, why did we go through this whole experience? And again, that's all I can say without going into spoilers. But I'll just say that the entire Night of storyline, both sets of chapters, really in the end just seemed it seemed a failure. It just was not a great story. It didn't accomplish what it was trying to accomplish. There's no real way to pad that out. While it has some interesting elements to it, I liked various parts of the story. Just so much went wrong and so much just didn't make sense that ultimately it was just a bad story. So I did like the follow-up to that. The whole traitor storyline was a far more interesting story to me. The various chapters, I guess, with the flashpoints, I'm not really necessarily a big fan of that method of storytelling. I did like more them on Iokath. Iokath's not a great planet, in my opinion, but I liked the method of storytelling there. I like a daily area that has a purpose, that actually was used to tell a specific story, a clearer story that is more relevant to the overall narrative. This is kind of, I guess, like Ilum was back in the original endgame stuff. Less like, what was it, McKeb, that just isn't really it's not a connected story. It was an interesting random story, but it just wasn't connected to the whole narrative, which, whatever. It was a good story, but this was not. This was a seriously lacking. It wasn't even a unified story. A couple of expansions, I guess, is the way to put it. It was a grand total of 25 chapters that told this meandering mess of a story with some interesting elements, but ultimately this Eternal Throne chapter is garbage. I did not like the end. It retconned so much stuff and just really kind of ruined some elements of some characters, to the point where I was just like, all right, whatever, I don't even care anymore. Which is not how you should, not how your story should leave your fans feeling. But anyways, guys, there you go. There are some differences between Knights of the Eternal Throne and Knights of the Fallen Empire, and I clearly liked the former, the Knights of the Eternal Throne, the conclusion of the story, far better than Knights of the Fallen Empire. Sorry if I was a bit rambling there. My thoughts are sometimes a little back and forth on this story. There are so many good elements, and there was so much promise to the story that I'm still sometimes amazed at how bad it was, considering the elements that were available to it and how good it could have been. But anyways, there we go, guys. Knights of the Fallen Empire versus Knights of the Eternal Throne. Please let me know down below in the comments what you thought of each of the stories. What were your favorite parts? Where did you think they fell down on the story? Please like and subscribe. Share this with a friend. Help us get to our 5,000 subscriber goal. And thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you enjoy playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, and may the Force be with you.